Today that reminded so many of us of the unsettling times that came with those banking failures back in 2008.
Now, our other top story tonight, the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank.
A major development in the banking world. The FDIC just reported the California regulator shut down Silicon Valley Bank.
U.S. authorities have seized control of Silicon Valley Bank.
Fallout from the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, the second biggest bank failure in U.S. history, and there are concerns about other regional banks too.
If you've been watching the news lately, I bet you've probably heard of Silicon Valley Bank, or SVB. It's the latest bank that has gone under due to a series of unfortunate events where a lot of bank customers and businesses pulled their money out all at the same time. And unfortunately, SVB did not have the funds available at the time to give everybody their money. This created a original run on the bank scenario. Now that this happened, there's been a lot of questions of what happens if our economic system or our financial system collapses. So today, that's what I want to talk about. Although we prepare for hurricanes, tornadoes, and a whole bunch of other disasters, very often we overlook the most possible disaster, which is an economic collapse, a recession that we may or may not be in, inflation, or just financial issues. Those are the things that can really ruin our lives more than a hurricane or a tornado. I want to build a rough timeline of the first week of an economic collapse or a banking collapse, then the first month or 2 months, and then last a year or 2 years after it happens, what we could expect. On the first week, in my opinion, there's two options or two ways that a banking collapse could go. One is kind of the slow approach, and two is the chaotic approach. So imagine this: you go into your banking app, your mobile bank, your whatever you use, and you see that your paycheck isn't posted. So that's a red flag. Or you see that on the news, people are reporting that, hey, some transactions are not going through, or banks are not giving you their money. Kind of little red flags, but you're not panicking. Your company says, hey, it must have been a glitch in the system, and you go on with your day. In the evening news, it'll get picked up, and maybe some things will brew. But I think the first week will be very slow. That's scenario number one. Scenario number two is the news media will pick this up and blow it out of proportion, or maybe in this case, not really. You will not be able to take your money out because everybody and their mothers will go to the banks and try to withdraw their money. Banks will unfortunately have to close because they just don't have the funds at the time, or their loan to deposits ratio, which is a whole other topic of how the banks use your money to make money for themselves, when that ratio doesn't level out and they just don't have the money for you. So that's another kind of issue that banks may face when there's an influx of people pulling their money out. The FDIC, or the Federal Deposits Insurance Company, I believe that's the name of it. I'll write it out somewhere. They say that they insure $250,000 of your money. Banks pay for that insurance. However, if an influx comes, there's no way that they can go and deliver on that promise. Our politicians will probably be going back and forth, blaming the other side of the aisle for what's going on, or most likely they will go and blame one company, a BlackRock or Microsoft or Apple or whatever company, as the scapegoat, and say, because they did this, this is the reason why we're here, and this is what we're going to do to fix this problem. As always, politicians, they like to embellish things and probably not tell the truth right away. So there's going to be a lot of questions in the first week. You may see a lot of volatility in the stock market too, where they might close early or they might stop some stocks from trading. We've seen this in COVID when there's just been a whole bunch of volatility, and the SEC decided that, hey, we're gonna tone things down and let things get, evened out before we resume trading. And the last thing that I think we'll see is, in reality, us living our day-to-day lives. I think some people will panic. The news media may say whatever they want to say, but we'll live our day-to-day lives. We'll work. Our companies will promise that we'll get our paychecks next week, or later in the day, or on Friday when it should have been on Wednesday, and all of that stuff. Now, what about a month out? At this point, we're not getting our paychecks. The government is making a bunch of empty promises, and things might turn south. For example, larger cities may see some civil unrest. At this point, I think government-assisted programs will be shut down. That includes welfare, food stamps, Section 8, a whole bunch of things that a lot of people depend on. And when you can't deliver for your family, where you don't have food on the table, tensions get really high and civil unrest may start. Now, I'm saying bigger cities only because the majority of people on government assistance are in bigger cities. Now, that also goes for any other place. However, I do believe that over the past couple years, we've seen that the big cities, the Portlands, Atlantas, Chicagos, New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, they really get hit anytime that something is, kind of twisted and turned around from the daily norm. We will also see a lot of logistical issues. For example, not getting deliveries of food or water or some type of equipment. You got to remember that if there's no paychecks, there's no workers. When there's no workers, there's no deliveries. And when that happens, a lot of other stuff kind of trickles down. You may also see failed attempts of the banking system coming back up, or the stock market coming back up, where they'll say everything's back to normal and there will be a lot of distrust, and ultimately it's not really gonna go anywhere. And now let's look at about from the first year to the third year, maybe even further. In my opinion, I think that things will slowly start getting back to normal. However, there will be a lot of distrust in the government and the financial sector in our country, only because that's what we've seen in 2008. Ever hear the term keeping your money under your couch or under your mattress? Yeah, that comes from people not trusting in the government, not trusting in our banking system. Our stock market will probably start to recover slowly, and there will be a lot of new regulations introduced into our system, where banks may be even regulated to a higher standard. They're very regulated now by even more, or loans and deposits, and banks may not be allowed to become so massive like our SVB or Citibank or Chase Morgan Bank. The lower class and the middle class will become poorer, and the higher class will become wealthier, and that gap between middle class and the higher class will become a lot bigger. Which is unfortunately how things happen. I forgot which president it was. He said, never let a good tragedy go to waste. And I think this will be a prime example of that. The people who know the system, that have connections, that have the money, they will benefit. Ultimately, people always find a way to benefit from these types of situations. Now, how can we prep for this? Now, I don't want to go off the rails and tell you about being a hardcore prepper or all of those things. Instead, I want to talk about a few practical things that you can do to prepare yourself in the event that this happens. Not saying it will, but it might. So the first thing, learn how to budget. The debt ratio for Americans is very high right now. I believe it's the highest that it's been in a very long time, where we just have a lot of credit card debt. Learn how to budget, save money, cut back on your expenses. You also want to learn how to be comfortable with living with less. For example, we're very comfortable with Amazon and Walmart and being able to just get everything that we need like this, but we often go and just buy so much junk that we don't need. If you cut back on all of that, that means that there's a substantial amount of money that you could be saving. In addition, remember, cash is king. You always want to have some type of cash on you. My recommendation, and I know it's difficult for some people, others it's pocket change, but maybe keep $2,000, $2,500 in small denominations, meaning ones, tens, fives, and 20s. You don't want to have 50s or 100s, because very often 50s and 100s are counterfeited, and people don't, actually 20s also now, people don't trust them. So when there's no way to verify the funds, people always want to use small bills. In addition, somewhat difficult, maybe have some silver or gold. When money is no longer available, things may also kind of step down to a bartering system, or gold and silver, since they're kind of the standards. And not to go full-blown prepper, but consider having some extra things in your house. For example, with COVID, we learned toilet paper, paper towels, they were gone. If you have kids, maybe you should go and have some extra food for them. The formula, we saw a shortage with that, and just food, maybe a month's worth of food. It's not really that much, and it doesn't cost that much. It can be built into a rotation. However, when things are going on in the world, it's very nice to know that, okay, I'm not gonna skip a meal. That's one less thing for you to stress about. And last but not least, in my opinion, I think it's good to maybe research what's going on, get a deeper understanding, and then possibly check out a few subreddits. I'll link them down below. The ones that I really like is Frugal, so it's r/frugal and r/prepping. They talk about a lot of these situations, and in Frugal it talks about how to save money, how to be better with your budgeting with however much money you make. Either you make $60,000 a year, 30 or 100. There's people in those categories that talk about how they save money and how they're able to build their wealth. And that's about it. Thank you for watching. I didn't want to go into details about SVB or any of those things. I just wanted to give a hypothetical timeline of what I think might happen. As always, this is just an opinion. I don't know. Nobody truly knows. So down in the description, if you have some suggestions that I skipped, or if you have your own timeline that you think the world may follow or United States may follow, write it down below. It'll be really cool. My channel, it's new. I'm really focusing on preparedness right now. Lately it's been radio, preparedness, communications, but I may venture out into other sectors. We'll see. So if you like this type of content, give me a like and a follow. I'd really appreciate it. And thank you so much, guys. Be safe, be prepared, take care of yourselves. Bye.